Good morning, everybody, and thank you for attending. My name is Federico Pena. I'm the founder and president of IT ROI Solutions. I'm going to be your speaker today. The topic of the webinar today is going to be around information governance. First thing, I'm going to get over some housekeeping questions. If you guys have any questions whatsoever, if you look on your doc on the right-hand side, there is a section for questions, so please feel free and type any questions even as we're going along throughout the webinar, and I'll try and get to them as quickly as possible. Usually I take breaks around every 10 minutes or so to answer questions that are related to the particular topics that we've been covering. I'm going to just get a little bit about us, about IT ROI Solutions. So as I mentioned before, my name is Federico Pena. I have been working with PPM tool sets for about 15 years now, and prior to that I used to do software configuration management consulting and ITIL and issue management consulting. So I've been around the enterprise software and enterprise consulting services for about 20 years. And about 8 years ago I've started a company called IT ROI Solutions, and we started off as a consulting firm. Our mission at the time was to provide services to clients, but we found that there was a lot of repetitive work. We focused a lot on the technical part, on doing integrations and so on. So we found that there were easier solutions by building software that we could then hand off to clients and allow them to help themselves. So we've been trying to simplify the PPM's life by not only providing them the tools that they require to be able to do the job, but also to add simplicity to all of the functions that are involved in the PPM. So we provided enterprise applications for integration tools for PPM tool sets. One of the components that we're going to be talking about today is going to be how we can integrate SharePoint into PPM tool sets as well as Microsoft Excel. So I'm going to get into the webinar topics, and as most of you that have seen my webinars in the past, I'm not usually a PowerPoint guy. I usually spend a couple of minutes doing PowerPoint presentations, and then I get a lot in depth into the demo. This webinar is going to have a little bit of a different feel to it, just because of the complexities around information governance. It's not really an easy topic. And what I want to do is I want to lead the way into why we're going to promote the solution that we're going to promote on how to use SharePoint, right? What we're trying to do is we're trying to simplify it. But first of all, I need to paint the picture to everybody of what information governance really means, okay? So the topics are going to be, what is information governance, PPM? What are the main issues that organizations encounter around information governance? How to improve information governance, right? And then we're going to get into simplicity and project management. So documents and collaboration, we're going to get into, there's a big part of communication around project management that isn't necessarily related to documents or actually storing information, but nevertheless are still important topics that we want to cover. And then I'm going to get into a live demo and show you how you can implement this relatively easy by utilizing SharePoint. So what is information governance for the PPM? Keep in mind that we're going to be discussing information governance, and we might dip a little bit into what's called data governance. So there's a big difference between information governance and data governance. But data governance is not going to be the focus of this presentation. Since we'll be displaying some data manipulation through SharePoint, we might have a small component in data management, but we're not going to cover anything around big data, data storage, data retention policies, all of that stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by giving you Gartner's definition of information governance. Okay? So Gartner's definition is information governance is the specification of decision, rights, and the accountability framework to encourage desirable behavior in the valuation, creation, storage, use, archival, and deletion of information. And of course it includes roles, processes, standards, and metrics that ensure the effective and efficient use of information in enabling an organization to achieve its goals. I'm not necessarily sure how many of you actually understood that, but basically what we tried to do here is we're going to simplify this definition. We want to get to the basics of what it is and why as the PMO should we really care, right? So in layman's terms, information governance is really the balance between the value that information provides and the risk that comes along with sharing that information. Now when I say risk, it's not only the risk information getting in the wrong hands, but the risk of losing that information because somebody deleted the information or removed the information. Okay? At an enterprise level, the information governance framework incorporates business needs, risk concerns, legal, regulatory requirements, and operational needs. The real benefits come when you integrate information governance into your overall corporate infrastructure and business processes to an extent where these requirements become routine. In other words, your information governance should be built into your business process so it's not considered a separate activity, but a foundation of good business processes. So the key thing, like I said, is obviously trying to make it easy, right? And of course, achieving this is not easy. And usually, information governance is something that is managed at the corporate level, and it's not a departmental decision, which is going to be a little bit different than what we're going to be talking about, because we're going to be talking about information governance really around the PPM space. At some point, your organization might want to get into a deeper dive and grab that PPM silo and move it to the enterprise level. But right now, we're just going to move it to, we're going to be talking about that departmental level. So, what are the main issues with information governance, right? I think if I asked anybody or on this call right now to provide a location of all their project artifacts for any particular project, at least half of you would mention more than 3 locations, along with, I don't know where half of that is. Right? When I was consulting in the PM space, most clients didn't know where all the information was for any given object, nor did they have access to it. And if they did have access to it, they didn't even know they had access to it, right? So managing information is not easy. And a lot of companies struggle with just identifying what they currently have as far as information. And the reason there's lots of moving parts when it comes to data collection and maintenance. I think this is why, there's lots of different frameworks developed for information management. A great one is the information management body of knowledge. Okay? So the information management body of knowledge is based on the argument that there are 6 areas of required management, 2 of which are business processes and business information management. Okay, but what are the key points, right? Information technology. Whether we like it or not, IT really holds the keys to our information, right? Usually it's the C-level, CIO that decides where this data is stored, how we maintain it. They decide, on the company structure as far as IT is concerned of where the company and where they're going to organize the data, right? We still haven't gotten to the part where we're going to let the end users be in agreement, right? But they're always going to try and acquire the newest technological products that can undermine stability and infrastructure, and they're going to say, well, no, the best solution is to go with a cloud system, and let's use Google Drive or Dropbox or OneDrive or so on, right? There's millions of different options out there for data storage. It's making a decision which one to use and which one works best, right? Business process and business information. Now, information systems are applied to business processes in order to improve them, and they bring data to businesses that become useful as business information. okay? But it's critical that you have that mixture between the business process and the business management so we get a business benefit, okay? You know, business benefit is, you know, what are the benefits that you guys are seeking? Is it necessary? Not only to be, you know, to be brutally honest, what can you achieve? You know, how to ensure it is easy to achieve for all the parties involved, right? We have to make sure that everyone here is happy, because if everyone's not happy, we're not going to be able to come up with a good solution, okay? And then business strategy, right? We have to make sure that we have a good business strategy to be able to manage a good information governance, okay? You know, and I'm gonna go back to still on the main issues. You know, a lot of the time the main issue is the end users like what they currently use, and they put information in wherever they want, right? So, you know, generally adopting information governance is not a task that can be implemented in a short period of time, right? We need education. And some of what we'll do, try to accomplish, is to provide some roadmaps that we've implemented with other clients to facilitate the process and ensure that we have buy-in from all the users. And for example, in this particular slide, shows a typical scenario, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen this at most companies, where end users are utilizing several different cloud storage apps, you know, like I said, the Google Drives, the Dropbox, the OneDrive, the iCloud, right? The guy that has the iPhone, iPad, he wants this, right? The guy that's got the Samsung, he wants the Google Drive. You know, and I have to admit, I'm absolutely guilty of that at our organization. You know, we have a process and a mandate at our organization to utilize OneDrive. I have issues with OneDrive because there are particular files and file extensions that it doesn't like, therefore it doesn't sync a couple of the files that I want synced, therefore I use the application that suits best for me, which is Google Drive. You know, I don't have any issues with Google Drive to do that, therefore that's what I use to back up all of the data on my PC. You know, that doesn't mean that, you know, it is the correct approach, nor is it something that I condone anyone else in the organization to do. I just do it because, you know, I have a gazillion other things to do. And, you know, the last thing I want to do is lose any of the data, right? So I think this goes to show that no matter how hard you try, it's going to be very difficult for you to get everyone involved to make sure that they actually follow the same plan. So remember, it's not the technology that's going to resolve the issue, you know, regardless of the content management software. It's the procedures, but most importantly, the ease of use, right? What do people want? You know, people want to continue doing what they're currently doing. People don't like change, right? So it's really about adopting the serious belief that there is significant value in information, and the more control around it you have, the better it is for your business. And then you ask, why is this important? Well, there's no reason in having all this information. Nobody knows where it is, or what it's for, or where to find it, right? This is where the ability to search the data becomes crucial. And the more data that you have, the more structured that it should be, so it becomes easier to find and more useful for your organization. All right, so how do we improve information governance? So let's say you're at an organization that doesn't currently have a structure in place, right? But you as the PMO or the project managers realize that, you know, documents are important to you. You have your project charters, you have other types of documents that you definitely need to manage. You have maybe some collaboration that you need to manage. You know, the first thing, absolute first thing that you have to do, and I know this sounds, I'm not going to say ridiculous, but it sounds obvious, is you have to get started, right? And that's the main, you know, I think that's the main stumbling block that you have to get over, right? The most important step in being able to organize your data or have some type of information governance is to actually start, right? And remember, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? It'll take time and planning, but you have to take that first step. Now, where do we start, right? One of the things we try and convince clients to do is, the first thing to do is to remove silos. And when I say silos, I was talking about the slide that we were on before, right? The guys that are storing their data in the Google Drives and the iClouds and blah, 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 and everyone's using different locations. Somebody's using a shared network drive, someone's storing it in the PPM toolset, someone's storing it in SharePoint, someone's storing it in Documentum, right? So there's a gazillion different options within inside of your organization. You at least have to come up with a decision on picking one, okay? Because silos are definitely going to help your information governance program fail, right? If you can't keep it all in one place, it's going to fail. Now, the next one is users, okay? Users, they don't make information governance any easier, right? So you need to get buy-in from them. And to get buy-in from them, you have to make sure that you make it easy, okay? So keep in mind, try and do the same things that you're currently, the same things that your staff is currently doing is the way you want them doing it. So that's what we're going to show you inside of the demo, how to let them do things the way they're currently doing it, right? But putting the data where you want it to go. Reducing volume is another key component. I don't know if some of you have heard of, what's called ROT, which is redundant, obsolete, or trivial data, right? You want to reduce all of that noise, right? A lot of times we recommend adding workflows for visibility of documentation. If your boss is going to look at the document, you're less likely to put up garbage in there, right? So you're less likely to put 10 files up that are all garbage as opposed to one that really generates the information that you need your team to see. Now we're going to talk a little bit about simplicity in project management, or specifically around collaboration, okay? And I'm sure a lot of you have this issue where 95% of the conversations that occur between project team members are either email or some type of office communicator like Link or Skype for Business or whatever it may be, right? So this is why we're going to start talking about SharePoint. And the reason we're going to talk about SharePoint is just about everybody that's on this call utilizes Office, okay? And Office and SharePoint are both made by Microsoft. And Microsoft has spent an awful lot of money trying to make sure that those two tool sets are completely embedded within inside of each other, okay? What that means is you can now have your link conversations show up in discussions of your projects. SharePoint also has a component of an email leader, right? So you can send emails with a particular title, and if you CC your SharePoint server, then your SharePoint server can consume those emails and store them for you, okay? So it gives you, like I said, a way of managing data related to that particular project or those particular projects. So there's nothing worse, if I look at my particular inbox, for example, my inbox has, I don't know, 32,000 emails, right? And anytime I need to look for something, it becomes a nightmare. So I would like to be able to have something where I can say, well, I'm going to go to this project because I know that particular email is related to that project and I know it's going to be there. Same as a particular conversation that I have with some particular team members. That information would be there because we have that seamless tie-in from those Office tools into our SharePoint. And like I said, this isn't something that you now have to go to your IT department and say, can you make this happen? Why? Because Bill Gates already made this happen for you. So you're really going to save a lot of effort. Why? Because your end users are going to be utilizing the same tools that they currently use. The only thing you're doing is you're moving that data into the correct locations. So I'm going to stop here for a couple of seconds and see if we have any questions. So remember, on your panel, there is a question and answer board. All right, I have a first question, which is, how is the security model managed for this? I'm going to wait, and hopefully you can ask this question again, or I'm going to get back to this question. Once I get into the demo, I can show you how we can manage the whole security component of your PPM toolset into SharePoint, how we can share stuff across, and how you can manage access to the people that you want to have access, and so we remove it from those people who don't necessarily need it. Okay, I don't have any other questions, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the demo. All right, basically here what I've got is I have a SharePoint site, and as usual, if you guys are familiar, SharePoint has a component of a web part for documentation and another one for collaboration, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open up a screen in CA PPM, and I'm going to show you how we can manage different documents different ways. All right. So the first thing is, and in this particular case, I'm using CA PPM as the demo environment, but we'll talk about how we can do it with different PPM tool sets, and as a matter of fact, different CRM tool sets as well. Okay. The first struggle that people have by utilizing web applications to manage documents is, in general, you don't have the drag and drop abilities. You know, instead you have to browse, click, drag to upload documents, and you have to do it one at a time. So this particular functionality of being able to grab a document, let's say, let me just bring this in here. You know, I can grab these documents and literally drag and drop them inside of my SharePoint. Okay. So here, what I'm doing is I'm taking the project managers that are always inside of the PPM tool set, right? They need to upload documents. Well, I'm giving them a window where they can upload documents relatively easy. Now, let's talk to that same project manager, and that same project manager now does not want to be in the PPM tool set or does not want to be inside of SharePoint, okay, for that matter. What this particular person wants to do is they now want to work locally with inside of their computer, okay? So with inside of SharePoint, it gives you the ability to actually map a network drive. So you can open this particular drive in Explorer, okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to open this drive inside of Internet Explorer, okay? So I'm going to refresh this. So now this particular end user can manage and manipulate the documents within inside of SharePoint. So they can come and say, but they're actually inside of a window that they're familiar with. So let's go into this particular folder and let's open this file here and say, so this is a normal step that this particular end user would do, okay? Except, you know, they open the file from within inside of the Windows Explorer window, they manipulated the file, they saved it, but really what they just did is they just did all of this inside of SharePoint. So if I was to come back to that particular SharePoint site, okay, that particular SharePoint site now contains that manipulated document. So, you know, we're not changing the way people work, or we're not changing the way people interact with their documents. We're letting them do everything that they currently do, okay? But we're actually storing it all in one location to make it easy to use, right? So in this one file system that we were at, okay? Oh, this is the wrong one. Let me go to, you know, this basically says this is where all of our PPM projects are stored. This is the folder for that one particular folder, and then we have, you know, our folder structure within inside of that. But clients can now work online, offline, and it's going to automatically synchronize that data to within inside of your SharePoint. Okay. The other advantage is we add workflows to your SharePoint, okay, for these documents. But the beauty with SharePoint is these particular workflows are now automatically integrated into your Outlook. So you can come and take a look at all of these documents, and you can go through the whole approval process. So I can open this task directly from my Outlook. So here, what am I doing? I'm allowing people to work on the data the way they currently work on their data, right? So everyone inside of organizations is always inside of Outlook, so why not be able to approve the documents, view the documents, and manipulate the documents directly from within inside of your computer, right? But have it updated in the correct location, right? So what we're trying to do here, like I said, is make the end user's life a lot easier, right? Do this by facilitating the way they interact with their data, okay? So I'm going to come back into here, into SharePoint, and I'm going to go directly into the document section. Okay, and within inside of here we can see, you know, and if I was to take a look at this particular workflow, right, we can visualize that this particular workflow needs approval for these people, right, and can also be approved directly from here in the same view that could have been done through your Outlook, okay? But now we get into the question, and you say, well, you know, that's great, but I'm a project manager and I have 50 projects, and each one of those projects contains 50 documents, and each one of those documents needs 5 approvals. How do I keep track on those 10,000 approvals that I need on that one project, okay? Well, that's another major advantage that SharePoint provides, okay? SharePoint gives you a view into these particular workflow tasks, and then we simply tie into that and utilize Excel services to tie into that. Let me give you an example of how we can do that, okay? So this is a simple report that connects to the workflow engine of my SharePoint, okay? And in this case, right, I just did a simple basic pivot table into Excel to display the data. So in this case, I can search by project manager. The next step I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do information governance. So I want project name, investment name instead of item name first. Okay? So I want project manager, and then I want project, okay? And then I want the item name, and then here it tells me, okay, the people that need to approve it and what status they're in, okay? So this gives you easy visibility into your particular project approval processes and allows you to be able to connect to these people and be able to say, look, you know, I have that particular project charter document that needs approval from you, and you guys haven't approved it. Is there a reason why? As opposed to actually having to go document by document to be able to find out why your projects are being held behind. Okay? So this is a great tool that gives you the ability, like I said, to manage all of these particular documents in one location. Okay? So this is also functionality that can be tied in directly from SharePoint. So now we've killed a bunch of different issues that can cause problems with inside of your information governance. One is silos, right? Whether people are storing their data in different locations. Like I said, here we give them multiple different access points to their information. We just do it and we store it all in the same location. So they can do it directly from their computer, they can do it directly from their PPM tool, they can do it directly in SharePoint, or they can just simply send an email to a mail eater inside of SharePoint so it can get consumed by SharePoint. The other component is the approval. So what is missing in approvals, what's needed within inside of approvals, right? And the next step, which we haven't quite covered yet, okay, is the ability to actually link your Office Communicator tool sets directly into your discussion boards, okay? So Microsoft has an out-of-the-box component that allows you to tie in your discussions into your discussion board of your projects. All right, so I'm going to stop here for a couple of seconds and see if anyone has any questions. I have one here that says, is the document approval across the enterprise, as in from all projects in all of our systems? All right, so this is of all of the approvals that live inside of your SharePoint. So, which means the workflow must be inside of SharePoint. And yes, this would go through your SharePoint farm and manage all of the, and give you all of the information regarding all of the reporting regarding the approvals on all of the documents that are in there. All right. How is security model? That question came back. How is the security model managed for this? All right. So that's a great question, and I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna come back into here. I'm actually gonna go back into the PPM toolset here. All right. So whenever we're inside of the PPM toolset, and like I said, in this particular case, I'm utilizing CA PPM for this demo, but we're not limited to that. But the way it works is, whenever you're within inside of here, what SharePoint does is it comes and grabs the team members from that particular project and gives them access to your SharePoint site. Now, generally, what a lot of clients do is they build it as part of a template component that now allows them to give particular group rights to different folder structures, okay? So, and it adds and removes users from those particular custom groups as needed. So you can manage your security directly from your PPM toolset, or you can manage it from SharePoint, or you can do a hybrid approach, right? And the reason for that is you might have a lot of end users that are within inside of your SharePoint that don't necessarily need or have access to your PPM tool. Let me just see, I got a couple more here. So the next question is, can risk issues and change requests be managed in SharePoint? Absolutely. And I'm gonna get into that directly inside of SharePoint here. Now we are going to be talking this particular component lands a little bit more in what's called data governance as opposed to information governance, which is basically the management and auditing of system-related data as opposed to documentation. Okay, so I'm gonna open this up in Explorer, just because Explorer works a little bit better with SharePoint than the way Chrome does. And I'm going to show you how we can actually add data components into SharePoint and then make these bi-directional. Okay, so we're going to talk about, we're going to do change requests. Let's say you wanted to add a change request component here that updates your PPM toolset. So it's literally as simple as coming here to the page, and we're going to say edit this page. Okay? And we're going to insert. And I'm going to say a web part. Okay? And remember, web parts are synonymous with portlets or mini reports. And we're going to select our custom web part, and I'm going to say I want the portlet boss, and I'm going to click Add. Okay? What this does is this now creates a container for us inside of your SharePoint that now we can configure to connect to your PPM toolset, right? So here's that particular container. Okay? So I'm going to come here and I'm going to say I want to edit this web part. Okay, first thing it does is it connects to your PPM source and says, give me a data source. So in this case, we said we wanted to do change requests, so I look for the one that has change request data. I'm going to edit the columns so we don't have a million columns to display here. And I want to show display the change name, the owner, the priority, and the investment. And I'm going to click OK. Because I'm in the context of a particular project, I want to filter the data by a particular project. So I'm going to filter by this current project. And I'm going to say I want to use the investment code as the filter criteria. And I click Apply. So now you can see that I have these two change requests, which are the same two change requests that are in my PPM system. But now you say, you want to be able to update them here. It's basically as simple as clicking on this checkbox that says, make it a studio boss, which is, make it bi-directional. We're going to add a couple of other configuration fields for that. And here, if I want to edit a particular existing value, I'm going to say I want to use the change name to edit. And I'm going to click OK. I click OK. And I'm going to save this. So now I can literally create a new change request. What's it do? SharePoint basically now contains all of the logic to be able to connect, okay, to your PPM tool. It brings all of the lookup values directly from your PPM toolset. And here I'm going to click Save and Return. And if I go back to this particular project, which is where we're at, you can see that that change request has been created. So yes, sky's the limit on how we make data bidirectional. Now the beauty about this is since you're not necessarily a PPM user, it basically audits all of the data with your SharePoint user and sends that to particular fields inside of your PPM tool. So it maintains that auditing capability of who not only created it, but who was managing it. Okay. I have another question that says, does this setup require an entire IT ROI template to be used, or can the web parts be displayed on any SharePoint site to display information from an existing implementation? Absolutely. So it does. We ship the product with this template, but generally clients want to have their own template, and then they might want to have a mixed approach of out of the box web parts that they use, as well as ours that extract the data from your PPM tool. So sky's the limit. Or you might just have your current template and you might want to add some additional web parts to it. So yes, you're definitely able to change it and manipulate it any way you like. Just consider our web parts just like any other SharePoint web part. Whether you can add it or remove it, it doesn't necessarily have to be there. I see that you're using CA PPM for the demo, but we have ServiceNow. All right, so I did mention that I am using CA PPM for the demo. And yes, since you have ServiceNow, it is your lucky day. We have this functionality also works with ServiceNow as well as with HP PPM, and we are working on several other platforms. We have scheduled for release an SAP platform as well as a PeopleSoft platform. Are these sites built from a template, or how do you maintain that structure? So as I mentioned before, generally, yes, clients want to build sites off the template, and that helps you assist you with the management of the documents, the folder structure, as well as what data you want to display. But you're not limited to one template. Most clients have multiple templates. Why? Because their IT department wants to see their projects one way, and their marketing wants to see their projects another way. So therefore, you have two different templates that basically shows them the data that they wanna see when they want to see it, and not really what other departments want to see. So I have another question here. Is SharePoint Connector available for CA PPM on-demand installations? Absolutely. All of our products basically work off the API, which means that on-demand, same as ServiceNow, right? Anything that's on the cloud would work. All we need is the web services to be exposed, which all tools expose that. All right, so I got another question here related to security. If work done in the IT ROI tool is logged to the IT ROI user and work done via SharePoint is logged as an admin IT ROI user and a specific SharePoint user, does this cause challenges in reporting or auditing? No, I mean we don't store the created by and last updated by is always going to be the integration user. We have two custom fields that specify who the SharePoint user was that last updated that data. Hopefully that answers your question, and if not, feel free to send me an email. We can get into a discussion on how that particular auditing component works. Does PPM Boss work with SharePoint 2007? It does work with 2007, but 2007 has a lot of limitations on display mechanisms. Therefore, we don't really support it anymore. When we say we don't really support it is we're not spending any effort on any development on 2007, and we're not fixing bugs on 2007. But yes, we do have a version that did work on 2007. Hopefully that helps. Okay, I don't think I have any more questions at the moment. All right, so first of all, I want to let everybody know that this is being recorded, so generally takes about a day or two, and we'll be posting this back up. We're also going to send a link to all of you with the replay in case you want to share that across with anybody else. If you guys have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us. So here's my contact information. Like I said, feel free to reach out to us with any other additional questions. I really appreciate everyone's time, and thanks again for everybody for attending.